So without any further ado, let me introduce Christina. Christina is, as I mentioned before, in Norway, and she's a retired speech therapist and also a certified ski instructor. She's a fantastic cross-country skier, by the way. If you ever have the chance to go to Norway in the winter, I would totally recommend it. She, as a lover of the outdoors, she became interested in foraging around the time a book called Stalking the Wild Asparagus became popular in the 1960s. And luckily, she moved to a country where foraging in the wild is a very popular pastime, as it is across Central Europe as well. She's a PTA member, and she's also been working on gardens for years and years and years, and she continues to forage for the wild foods she enjoys to this day. Christina, we're really looking forward to your presentation, and I'm also interested in how the foraging is going, now in the time of social distancing. So take it away. Do you have your video ready?
Yeah, I'm trying to get the video, click on the video, but there.
I
got it.
Oh, you got
have
it?
all your videos.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Yeah, I know.
Gotcha.
Angela was going to help me.
Okay, good. And one thing before we get started, someone just asked, where do you find your own name to put in the location voting? And I'm so sorry to interrupt, but if you go to the participants list, you'll find your name on that list, and that's where you can update your information. Again, it's at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you'll see participants. Just click on participants, find yourself, and highlight your name, and you can change it. But without further ado, we're going to switch over to Christina. And Christina, I'm really looking forward to hearing from you. Go ahead.
Okay, it's really nice to be here today. It's quite an amazing presentation we've had thus far. Very impressive. First, I want to say I am not a foraging expert. I simply like to go walk in the woods and find the foods that I particularly like. In these Corona times, we need to stay safe. So I thought, how can I contribute to Earth Day? Well, I thought, we can maintain social distancing and continue to go for walks in the woods by ourselves or with our family, and we can learn to identify some plants and pick them and take them home. And it even reduces your shopping list. These foods can be found almost anywhere. Today, I'm only going to select 3 simple plants, but I ask and invite everyone to please contribute to the blog that we have started on the Women's Caucus about foraging for food. So add your recipes and other plants and any additional knowledge that you might have about your plants. There are a lot of edible foods, but not all edible foods taste good. So what we're going to be talking about today are the foods that I think do taste really good. And the first one we have is nettles. Julie, Angela, if you could get the slide up there of the nettles.
Nettles.
That was the slide of the ones with the flowers, but it doesn't make any difference. Nettles can be found almost everywhere in the world. And you will see on the leaves that they're on the back sides, that they're kind of hairy, and the stems have little pinchies on them. And that's those little pinchies are the things that make you get a rash. They're called stinging nettles. And they have been used for centuries in traditional medicine and as a food. They're an awesome superfood, and they contain large amounts of vitamins and minerals. Nettles are commonly used in the past for bladder problems, including urinary tract infections. Because of the high concentration of minerals, nettles have also been used for arthritis and osteoporosis. I've even seen online where some people will take the nettles, rip them apart, and put the leaves directly onto their joints. And this is supposed to help with the arthritis. I have never tried it, but some people do say that it does help. The health benefits of stinging nettles have actually been confirmed in scientific research. In 2011, an astonishing study showed it inhibited severe acute respiratory syndrome for coronavirus in mice. Quite hard to believe. They do sell nettles extract in health food stores, but I think it's best to eat the plant itself. When used medically, nettles can be dried and made into a tea. You can dry nettles easily. They can either be hung or put in a dehydrator, or you can just hang them up in your garage. It was very important in Norway during the war that they were able to dry nettles because they couldn't go to the grocery store and buy greens. So you could take these dried nettles and crumble them the same way you would use parsley. So you could put that on top of your soups or on top of anything. The only advantage about picking nettles is that you must, I must say it again, must wear gloves because they do sting slightly. Sorry for the cough. When rubbed against the skin, they can create a slight burning or rash sensation, but it's usually just temporary and not that bad. If you should end up getting a rash, you can just use calamine lotion, and in normal people, it just goes away very quickly. But when you are picking, your gloves should be made of leather or rubber so that it does not get in contact with your skin. And when you take them home and you're washing the nettles, because they're in nature, so they can be dirty, you want to wash them, you can wear rubber gloves. Once you put them in the pot of water and you cook them, even just for a minute, the sting stops, the burn's gone. You can take them then and chop them up with a knife or use a food processor. In addition to eating, nettles have many other good benefits for the garden. So if you find some in your garden, don't get rid of them. First of all, they are very beneficial to insects. So they will attract insects. They also can act as a compost activator. So once you have cooked up your nettles and you've discarded some of the stems, you can throw those stems into your compost heap if you have one. You can also take a bunch of nettles, and I've done this myself, put them in a bucket of water, fill the bucket completely full of nettles, and stir that every second day and put it outside. And once it gets a kind of a peculiar noxious odor, which will take a couple of weeks to ferment, then you have this most wonderful free fertilizer. You can also buy that in some stores, not very often, but you do see it, and it's rather expensive. So you can make your own. And once this water is ready, you take 1 part of water to 1 part of the liquid, nettle liquid, to 10 parts of water. And you can put that on your house plants or your garden plants. So when am I going to pick nettles? All right, the best time is from April to late June. The rule of thumb, they're best before they become bitter, or as you can see on the pictures, when those little flowers are there, those little flowers, they're not really flowers, they're more like little green balls. One of my favorite things to eat, so you want to be doing this now, best before midsummer, as they say. My all-time favorite is nettle soup, which I often also freeze, so I have some for the winter. And when you are cooking the nettles, especially for freezing for the winter, save your water. You can drink it as tea, or you can water your plants with it. This soup, I think, is so wonderful that the Queen of Sweden used it for her 50th birthday celebration. It was on the menu. And I see it on the menu all the time for Nobel banquets. So it isn't something like, oh, just free food. It's delicious food. One of my very favorite Norwegian recipes. I don't know, Angela, if you have that cream nettles, picture of the cream nettles there, but if you do, you can show it. But it's just basically green nettles, and you make a bechamel sauce. A bechamel sauce is a very simple white sauce, which is 2 tablespoons of butter, 2 tablespoons of flour, 1 1/4 cup of milk, salt and pepper, and a pinch of nutmeg, which is optional.
Christina, quick question. Is there anything that ever when we're looking for nettles where we'd be confused and confuse it with another plant?
Well, it's pretty identifiable because, you know, first of all, if you touch it and it stings your finger, you know.
That's true. That's very true.
And the stem, I had a picture of it up there. The stem has all these spikes. So very few plants actually have that. The stem is full of spikes.
Fantastic. Oh, thank you so much.
You are certainly welcome. So once you have your bechamel, you basically, and your nettles in there, you can add a vegetable broth to that, and potatoes and carrots and anything else you want to make it. It's just your imagination that is the limit. Now we're going to show you a 1-minute video of a very, very simple nettle soup. Angela?
And while Angela's putting that up, is there, someone asked about a foraging blog. Do you have a foraging blog that you recommend?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Like I said, I'm not a foraging guru. I just go into the woods and try to look for the things that I really like myself.
Exactly. And
But
here's
there are a lot of books. There are a lot of books. And we've started a blog on the Women's Caucus.
Oh, cool. All right. So maybe that's what they're.
And that's the one I'm asking everybody to contribute to.
Okay, good. Can you pop that blog link into
I will do that at the end.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much, Christina. And now here's the video.
Okay, we saw there that he added a dash of cream at the end there. That's very often done with nettles. Okay, next up on my 3 plants is one that everybody knows. It's the common dandelion. Dandelions are found everywhere in the Northern Hemisphere, between the tropics and the polar regions. Dandelions are one of the most vital spring plants and a great source of nectar for pollination. Their lovely little flowers are great food for the birds. There are many species of dandelions, but for the one we're talking about right here is to look at the plant that you see, and it's one flower on one stem. Those are the ones we want to look for to eat. This entire plant is edible. The leaves, the flowers, and the roots. I think they're best when they're young because as spring goes on, they tend to get bitter, same as nettles do. They get bitter as they age. So early spring is the best time to eat and pick dandelions. We've been eating dandelions every other day this week. Dandelions are also known for their great health benefits. They're an excellent source of vitamin A, C, and K. They have small amounts of other vitamins like E and B, and dandelions also provide several minerals, including iron, calcium, magnesium, and potassium. They're full of antioxidants, just packed full. They've been shown to control blood sugar levels and are mild diuretic. In England, they call them pissaweed since they do create sometimes frequent urination. But dandelions have been used for human food throughout history and as an herb since recorded history. The Native Americans were known to use dandelions, and it was believed that they arrived in North America on the Mayflower, but they were not stored on the Mayflower for the purpose of eating. They were used for their medicinal purposes. Dandelions could also be beneficial in the garden because their roots are so very, very deep. And they have been cultivated in small gardens and on massive farms. So you don't necessarily want to take dandelions out. And I learned when I was in charge of the school garden at the local school here that really weeding is disruptive to the soil. So leave some of your weeds there. They're not such bad things as you think. They're a good companion plant also because their roots go so deep, so it brings nutrients to the shallower plants. It also attracts pollinating insects. The most common way to prepare dandelions is to blanch the young dandelions, allow them to cool, then sprinkle them with olive oil, lemon juice, and salt and pepper, and any desired herb. Now that is really simple. Blanching removes some of the bitterness, and some people say if you soak it in salt to begin with, it also removes some of the bitterness. The young leaves can also be added raw. The other day I made, oh, Angela, you want to put up my pasta dish if you have it there? I made a pasta dish. It was really, really simple. It was a vegetarian dish. I made it with mushrooms, onions, garlic, a lot of paprika and tomatoes, and a can of Munti tomato sauce. And then I threw in a bunch of green dandelions into the sauce and added a bunch of green dandelions on top of the sauce. The flowers can also be pulled apart, and you can eat them too. So they can be either eaten raw or prepared. They can be eaten whole or torn apart. The petals can be made into tea. So when you're making tea out of dandelion petals, just pull all the petals apart, throw them in loose water, just like you would any tea, and let it steep. And you have a beautiful, nicely yellow colored tea. And you can add, for example, a mint leaf for some extra flavor. There are many people, and you'll see some YouTube videos that show people frying dandelion flowers whole, or they'll take the petals. And the most common thing to do is to put the dandelions petals or the whole flower in a tempura batter and then fry them. They're rather tasty. But there's one thing I'd like to warn you. If you have plant allergies, be cautious about eating an abundance of dandelion flowers. Allergic reactions can occur. And now we're going to watch a 4-minute video from YouTube about preparing dandelions.
Each spring I look out onto my lawn and I see all kinds of wildflowers. There's one out there that is actually edible and quite delicious. It's the dandelion. We've all seen these greens. They're long with little sharp edges. In fact, the name dandelion is derived from the same word as the tooth of the lion. Now, what I like to do is cook them as a saute, but a lot of people find that they're slightly bitter. That bitterness doesn't bother me. I think it adds depth to a salad or a saute. And what I'm doing here is I'm taking really just a pound of dandelion greens, and I've already prepared them. I've chopped them coarsely, and I've put them in just a brine. And this is just about 4 cups of water with a teaspoon of salt. This helps to take a little bit of the bitterness out of them. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is just put them into boiling water here for about 5 minutes. Very much like the daffodil, the dandelion is really sort of a symbol of spring. Its bright, perky flowers just pop up everywhere, seemingly overnight. Now, the best way to grow them actually is to grow dandelions yourself. You can buy the seed and you can sow them as you would any other salad green. In fact, I like to start them early on in my greenhouse when it's still very cold outside, and then I can transplant them out into the garden. Now, I'll let these dandelions cook here with the lid off, and what I'm going to do now is get my saute ready, and I'm just using about 1/4 cup of vegetable oil. You can use olive oil. And I just want to saute these onions. I'm using a white onion and really just 1/2 cup of onion is all you need here for this amount. And then garlic. I've just taken 1 clove coarsely chopped. I'm going to add that. And then to give it a little heat, I think a little cayenne pepper is very, very nice here. So I've taken 1 pod of the cayenne pepper, no seeds, just the pod, and I crushed it by hand. You can see it adds a beautiful color to this. And I'm just going to saute this until the onions become clear. And then at that point, we're going to take the dandelion greens and put them in here, and we'll be ready to serve it up. You'll find that the onion and the oil also help take a little bit of that bitterness out of the dandelion green. Okay, now I've lifted the greens out and I'm draining the water, and you can see that they've reduced quite a bit. Most of the water's off. I've turned the heat off of the saute, but now I'm going to go ahead and add the dandelions. Beautiful color green. And my oil is still hot, so it's going to cook just a little bit, but you really, at this point, just want to mix all those beautiful onions and the garlic together thoroughly. You can see it's a beautiful, beautiful color, and it smells divine. This recipe will be enough for about 4 people. And what you want to do is you want to just add a little salt, and then of course some pepper, fresh cracked pepper. I like a lot of that. And then the way you can serve it is with just a little Parmesan cheese, just on top like that. And it's really a wonderful taste of spring that you should try. Very good.
Well, I hope you've all gotten a new respect for the simple little dandelion.
It's true. Christina, I have one question before we move to the third plant. When we're foraging for dandelions, is there anything we need to know about avoiding?
Yes, yes. I was definitely going to, that's going to be at the end of my presentation, but I'm glad you brought it up now. We should definitely think about the possibility that the area may have been sprayed for pesticides. So if you go into your park, like I live across the street from a park here in Norway, they usually don't spray with pesticides, but you don't know that. So if you can safely pick dandelions in your own yard, if you're lucky enough to have a yard when you live in the city, because then you know whether they have or have not been sprayed. Now the likelihood in any woods or walkway in the forest is not going to have been sprayed. So that's one thing that's very important to remember when picking any foraged food. Thank you for the question, Julia. Okay, our last, but not least, plant is lamb's quarters or pigweed. It has a lot of different names. It's called Fat Hen in the south of Wales, in New South Wales. So it is a plant that is very identifiable, and you see it grows all over the world. It is sort of whitish in color, and I will show you a video at the end where it's very easy to see that it's also is kind of water resistant. It is believed to be native to Europe. And recent archaeological studies have shown that the seeds were stored and used by the Blackfoot Indians in the 16th century. It is also a purifying plant and restores healthy nutrients to poor soil. So this unique plant tends to spread quickly no matter what soil conditions it's in. So lamb's quarters can be found in places almost anywhere in nature, such as parks, roadsides, gardens, open fields, and clearings. They have also been cultivated as a crop in lieu of spinach, as an animal feed in Asia and Africa. Whereas in Europe and North America, it's commonly thought of as a weed. It is an invasive plant, so it actually can create crop losses. It loves to grow in potato fields, but it does aid in pest control. And also, if you have allergies, avoid picking this plant when it is producing its flowers or seeds. You will see in the picture there with the black background, those are what they call the flowers. They're really just little green-black balls, greenish, dense together. There is no petal. Lamb's quarters is a favorite amongst foragers because it does basically taste very much like spinach. I even think it's milder tasting than spinach. And in many places like India and Pakistan, they actually raise it for human consumption. The leaves are highly nutritional in A and C, calcium, iron, and protein. So it ticks all the boxes. And the seeds that it produces, one plant can produce 75,000 seeds. And these seeds are also very good for the birds. And this plant is also closely related to quinoa. So the quinoa seeds are very similar to the seeds that the quinoa plant produces. So you can, if you so want, I have never done it, but you can collect the seeds and use them in as a bread enhancer, or throw it into your oatmeal, and so on and so forth. The one good thing about lamb's quarters, in comparison to the other plants that we've talked about, is that it is also usable throughout the summer season. My mother-in-law was just delighted that this plant grew in Norway during occupied Norway in World War II, because then she had a vegetable, because they weren't available on the market. So she had vegetables for her children, and she served it creamed with the bechamel sauce that I spoke about earlier. The leaves are on the top, are sort of whitish, and they have some teeth on the edges. This plant can grow up to about 1.5 meters. That's the normal size. The telltale, really identifying feature, though, is the dusty white coating on the new growth and on the undersides. Depending upon where you live, lamb's quarters is basically a summer plant. So you could eat it basically throughout the season. The one thing you do also have to remember about lamb's quarters is that it does contain oxalic acid, but that sounds awful, but so does rhubarb, and so does kale, spinach, cocoa, and beets. Therefore, when eating this raw, you should eat it in smaller quantities. Cooking does remove this acid. Steaming this edible weed is another method of cooking, and it can be added to soups, sautés, stir fries, omelets, you just go on. And it can be harvested, like I said, throughout the year. So your imagination is the only thing that's going to limit you with lamb's quarters. On the blog that we have, I have a nice recipe for the lamb's quarters for a delicious soup. And now we can watch the lamb's quarters video that will help you also identify the plant.
Thanks, Christina. And I think Angela's putting up that video now.
Hey, welcome to Haphazard Homestead. Do you see it? Do you see it? Do you see this plant? If you know what this plant is, I know you're excited now, because this is, hands down, the #1 weed to eat growing in the garden or out in the wild. It's lamb's quarter. In this video, I'm headed out to pick some lamb's quarter here on the homestead, and then I'm going to cook it up with the only recipe that anyone needs to know. Lamb's quarter shows up in disturbed soils in early summer. It's the easiest thing in the world to pick at this stage. I just pull it up and tear off the roots. That's it. But I don't always pull up the whole plant. When the plant is older, I pinch the tips out and just use those. One advantage to picking those tips is that the lamb's quarter branches out, and then I can come back to the same place and pick more over and over again. Two distinctive features of lamb's quarter are its triangular leaves and that white residue on its growing tips. So there's the lamb's quarter. You can see it there. This is kind of a decent size. All you're trying to do in harvesting is take that tip like that. It's just nice and tender. It just snaps. It doesn't snap off. You just have to pinch it off. That's all. Now, if you want to pick every leaf off, you can. It has kind of a slick feel. It feels like there's grit that kind of feels a little wet. It's that white stuff that's supposed to be there. That's its hydrophobic coating. When you put it in water, it sheds water. It's a hydrophobic coating. See how it rubs off? It's just so distinctive of lamb's quarter. All right, So here's our lamb's quarter. You can see the little tops. Has a gritty kind of feel. It's not gritty, it feels wet as soon as it has like a white little coating that comes off as soon as you touch it. What we're gonna do, just gonna rinse it real quickly just to make sure we don't have some garden dirt in it. And then we're gonna just cook it up. It's the easiest thing in the world. Lamb's quarter is so good. It's good raw. It is even better. It is so good cooked. Now this is a unique property of lamb's quarter. You can see I've got a tub of water here. It's got water. But it doesn't just get wet. It's that little coating on the leaves that makes lamb's quarter leaves kind of hydrophobic. It's water resistant. Some will come off in the water, but you don't have to wash all that off. That's part of lamb's quarter. It is so easy to cook lamb's quarter. This entire batch took less than 3.5 minutes from start to finish. I just put it in a pan with the water that clings to its leaves, and then I stir it around. Sometimes I add a little extra water, but nothing else. It cooks down so fast, and it smells so good. There it is. Now all you have to do, put a little nice salt on there, and you are set. So is lamb's quarter any good? Here's a live testimonial. That is so good. That's why it's a good thing the dandelions come first, because once you have this, oh. So that's the only recipe anyone needs to know to really enjoy lamb's quarter. Otherwise, lamb's quarter can be used exactly like spinach or Swiss chard. But lamb's quarter is too tasty of a weed to want to hide its great flavor. Well, I hope things are going well at your place. I appreciate your comments. And if this is your first time here, I hope you'll subscribe so you don't miss out on the wild things we're always eating here at Haphazard Homestead.
Okay, so we've learned a couple of plants today, and I'm sure some of you already know them, but I hope we've gotten a new respect for them because not only are they good, but they are good for you. Again, I would like to repeat that remember to maintain social distancing when you're out foraging and pick in places where you know there's no pesticides. So I've put in the chat box what Julius requested, where we have this posted, what I've just talked about posted. And I would like to invite everybody to add to this. Come with your own plants, come with your own suggestions. So do we have any? I see that Jim is rethinking his opinion of the dandelion.
Oh, Christina, and can you pop that link in again? We can't see it yet.
Oh, you're right. I forgot to put it on. I've moved my keyboard, so
No worries.
So it's going to take me a second to get that.
And by the way, and while you're doing that, have you ever foraged for wild garlic?
Yeah, yes, I have. They grow in Norway as well. But if you know about them, why don't you tell us about them?
Oh, I don't. I've never foraged. They actually sell them in our grocery store, luckily for us.
Oh. Well, you can see them. The tops of them look like little chives when they are growing in the woods.
Oh, fantastic! And now I see I'm going to pop the link that you've sent us, and here we go. We're going to pop this up for everybody. Here's the link for everybody. Thank you so much, Christina. You're so amazing. That was really super to know. I've actually never heard about lamb's quarters ever in my life, so that's very cool.
And they're really good. They really are.
Well,
I'd like to just add, if somebody has something to add to Christina's blog on foraging, send it to us at Women's Caucus, and I'll make sure she gets it, and we can put it in our climate blog. We'll all learn together about that.
That was the whole point of this, is that we're learning
Thank you,
together.
Christina.
You're welcome.
Now I remember, I'm going to go out in my yard and pick some dandelions after lunch. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Christina. And